The receptionist at Lakeside Plasma Center handed me a clipboard with a stack of forms attached. Her practiced smile never reached her eyes, the kind of smile you perfect after seeing hundreds of desperate people walk through these doors. "Fill these out completely," she said, tapping a manicured nail on the first page. "Make sure to check any boxes for high-risk behaviors or medical conditions. When you're done, take a seat until we call your name." I nodded, feeling heat crawl up my neck as I retreated to an empty corner of the waiting room. The blue vinyl chair squeaked as I sat down, and I stared at the forms, my vision blurring slightly. Olivia Bennett, age 52. Current address. I hesitated, then wrote down Grace's address, my sister's cramped 2-bedroom in Rogers Park. 8 months ago, I would have written the penthouse on Lakeshore Drive. 8 months and a lifetime ago. Around me, college students scrolled through phones, probably scheduling their plasma donations around classes. An elderly man dozed in the corner, his weathered hands folded over a worn jacket. A young woman in scrubs, coming off a night shift from the look of her exhausted eyes, filled out her own forms with practiced efficiency. All of us here to trade parts of ourselves for cash. The difference was they looked like this was routine. I felt like an imposter in my carefully pressed blouse, the last remnant of my former wardrobe that I'd saved for job interviews that never materialized. "Just for the plasma," I whispered to myself, clicking my pen repeatedly. "Just $45 for Emma's medication." My daughter's asthma had flared badly since we lost our health insurance. The inhaler cost $60, and I had exactly $28.64 in my checking account. I'd spent the morning calling pharmacies searching for the lowest price calling in favors, but there was no way around it. Emma needed her medication, and I was out of options. I filled out the medical questionnaire with meticulous honesty, each question a small humiliation. Recent tattoos, no. Though I'd once planned to get a small celebration tattoo after our 25th anniversary. That plan died along with my marriage. Recent travel number, the last trip had been 3 years ago, Paris, for an international hospitality conference. Now I couldn't afford the bus to downtown. History of drug use number, recently incarcerated number. Have you ever fainted during a medical procedure? I checked no, though I considered checking yes, just to have someone pay closer attention. I hadn't eaten since yesterday's lunch, a peanut butter sandwich at Grace's kitchen table while she was at work, because I couldn't bear to see the mixture of pity and resentment in my little sister's eyes. Olivia Bennett. A young woman in colorful scrubs stood at the doorway, clipboard in hand. Her name tag read Sarah Rodriguez, phlebotomist. I gathered my purse and followed her through a door marked screening room. The space was small but clean, with a blood pressure cuff, a scale, and the antiseptic smell of medical facilities everywhere. "First-time donor," Sarah asked, gesturing for me to sit. "Is it that obvious?" She smiled kindly. "We remember our regulars. I'm Sarah. I'll be handling your intake and initial screening today." Sarah looked to be in her late 20s, with a warm smile and gentle efficiency as she wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my arm. The Velcro ripped loudly in the quiet room. 120/75, she announced, making a note. "That's good. Now let's check your weight." I stepped on the scale, watching the numbers settle. 142 pounds. I'd lost 18 pounds since the bankruptcy, not from any intentional diet, but from the gnawing anxiety that made food taste like cardboard. "Perfect," Sarah said. "Now I'm going to check your veins for donation compatibility." She wrapped a tourniquet around my arm, just above my elbow. Her fingers pressed gently along the inside of my forearm, and she let out an appreciative whistle. "Wow, you have amazing veins for donation," she said, genuine enthusiasm in her voice. "See how prominent these are. Some folks we have to hunt and prod for 20 minutes, but yours are right there saying hello. This is going to be super easy." "At least some part of me is still functioning properly," I muttered before I could stop myself. Sarah gave me a curious look, but didn't pry. Instead, she prepped my arm with an alcohol swab, the cold liquid evaporating quickly on my skin. "Small pinch," she warned, and then slid the needle in. I barely felt it. My mind was elsewhere, calculating. $45. After this, I'd have $73.64. Enough for Emma's inhaler, with $13 left over. Maybe I could buy groceries. A chicken, some rice, make it stretch for the week. "See perfect veins," Sarah said, watching the dark red liquid fill a small vial. "You were made for this." Made for this. The words echoed hollowly. I'd been made for something else entirely. I'd been Olivia Bennett, CEO of Elegance Events, the premier event planning company in Chicago, for 2 decades. I'd coordinated weddings for politicians' daughters, galas for Fortune 500 companies, charity auctions that raised millions. I'd had 52 employees in office in the loop and a reputation for solving the impossible. Then came the Lakeside Banking Anniversary Gala. 8 months ago, the night that destroyed everything. The refrigeration system had failed a catastrophic equipment malfunction that no one could have predicted. By the time anyone noticed, the seafood had been sitting in unsafe temperatures for 4 hours. 47 guests had gotten severe food poisoning. 3 had been hospitalized. The lawsuits came fast. $2.3 million in damages. Our supplier, the one whose equipment had failed, declared bankruptcy, leaving me holding the liability. Our insurance company found a clause, some technicality about operational negligence, and refused to pay. Everything I'd built over 20 years evaporated in 6 weeks of legal proceedings. And Ryan, my husband of 26 years, had packed his clothes while I sat numb on our bed. "You've ruined our lives." He'd said, his voice cold with a fury I'd never heard before. As if the spoiled seafood had been a deliberate act on my part. As if I hadn't lost everything too. He'd moved in with Madison, his 37-year-old marketing coordinator, before our separation agreement was even signed. "All done with this part," Sarah said, placing a cotton ball over the tiny puncture and bending my arm up. "I'll run these quick tests, and if everything looks good, we'll get you set up for the full donation. Should only take a few minutes." I nodded, watching her label the vials with practiced efficiency. She disappeared through a side door, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the rhythmic beeping of medical equipment in the next room. Through the thin walls, I could hear the quiet hum of machines and occasional conversations between staff members. The reality of what I was doing, selling my plasma to buy my daughter's medication, hit me anew. How had it come to this? I closed my eyes, trying to push back the familiar wave of shame and anger. But instead of darkness, I saw Emma's face, 24 years old, brilliant creative, forced to drop out of Northwestern's architecture program in her final year because I couldn't pay tuition anymore. Now working retail at a store in Lincoln Park, measuring out her dreams in square feet of overpriced boutique space instead of designing buildings that could change skylines. The door opened. Sarah returned, but her expression had changed dramatically. She was pale, her eyes wide, clutching my blood vials as if they contained nitroglycerin. "Mrs. Bennett," she said, her voice noticeably different, higher, uncertain. "There's a—" She stopped, visibly composing herself. "Would you mind waiting just a few more minutes? Dr. Stewart needs to verify something with your sample." My heart skipped. Is something wrong? Am I sick? No, it's not like that. Her reassurance seemed genuine, but her hands were trembling slightly. "It's actually just wait, please. Dr. Stewart will explain everything." Before I could press further, she hurried out again, still carrying my blood samples like precious cargo. 5 minutes stretched to 10, then 15. I considered gathering my things and leaving. Clearly something strange was happening, and in my experience, strange usually meant bad. Maybe they'd found some disease. Maybe I was dying, and that's why I'd lost everything, some cosmic preparation for the end. The thought was almost comforting in its finality. When the door finally opened again, a man in his late 40s wearing a white coat entered, followed by Sarah and another woman I didn't recognize, older, silver-haired, with an air of academic authority. "Mrs. Bennett, I'm Dr. James Stewart, medical director here." He extended his hand, which I shook automatically. "This is Dr. Patricia Coleman, a hematology specialist from Northwestern Memorial. I apologize for the wait, but we needed to confirm something quite extraordinary about your blood." Extraordinary. I repeated the word, feeling foreign in my mouth. Nothing about me had been extraordinary in 8 months. I was a failed businesswoman, a divorced woman, a burden on my sister, a mother who couldn't provide for her child. Dr. Stewart sat on the rolling stool across from me, leaning forward with barely contained excitement. "Mrs. Bennett, you have what we call R-null blood. It's often referred to as golden blood because it's the rarest blood type on Earth." I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "I'm sorry," Dr. Coleman stepped forward, her voice precise and clinical. "Your blood lacks all rhesus antigens, the protein markers that define most blood types. But more than that, your blood has a unique immunological structure we've only seen documented 3 times in medical literature. Ever. In the entire world." "I don't understand," I said slowly. "What does this mean?" "It means Dr. Stewart said that your blood is universally compatible with virtually any rare blood type. Not just renal to renal, but with a spectrum of rare blood disorders that typically have no compatible donors. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the arms of the chair. There are only about 43 known people worldwide with standard Rh-null blood, Dr. Coleman continued. But what you have this particular variant, we call it universal rare. Your blood could potentially save patients that even standard Rh-null donors cannot. A sharp series of beeps came from Dr. Stewart's pocket. He pulled out his phone, glanced at it, and his eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me," he said, standing abruptly. "I need to make a call. Mrs. Bennett, please wait here. This is—" He glanced at Dr. Coleman, who nodded. "This is very important." He left the room almost at a run, leaving me alone with the two women. Sarah knelt beside my chair, her earlier nervousness replaced by something like awe. "Mrs. Bennett, do you understand what this means?" "No," I said honestly. "I came here for $45. Dr. Coleman's expression softened. "Your blood has just been entered into the International Rare Blood Registry. Within minutes, it will ping against a database of critical cases worldwide patients who are waiting for compatible donors. But I just need $45 for my daughter's asthma medication." I said the absurdity of the situation, making me almost laugh. "I don't want to be in an international registry. I don't want to be extraordinary. I just want—" My voice broke. Sarah squeezed my hand. "You just became the most valuable person in this building, Mrs. Bennett. Maybe in this city. Possibly in this country." 20 minutes later, I was still sitting in that same room, but now it was crowded. Dr. Stewart had returned with his phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapidly in what sounded like German. Dr. Coleman was on her laptop, typing furiously. Sarah kept bringing me water, which I couldn't drink because my hands were shaking too badly. Then the door opened, and a man in an immaculate charcoal suit walked in so out of place in this utilitarian plasma center that he might as well have been a visiting dignitary. "Mrs. Bennett," Dr. Stewart said, his voice pitched higher than before. "This is Timothy Walsh. He's a representative for the Richter Banking Group and has come here specifically to speak with you." The suited man stepped forward, extending a manicured hand. His watch alone probably cost more than my entire year's rent. "Mrs. Bennett, it's an honor," he said with practiced smoothness. "I apologize for this unconventional introduction, but time is of the essence." I shook his hand automatically, feeling increasingly disoriented. "I don't understand what's happening." Timothy Walsh opened a slim leather portfolio with the efficiency of someone used to high-stakes negotiations. "Are you familiar with Alexander Richter?" he asked. The name rang a distant bell. "The Swiss banker." "Precisely, Mr. Richter is currently facing a critical health situation. He requires immediate heart surgery that can only be performed with transfusions from a donor with your specific blood type." He paused, his eyes meeting mine. "Mrs. Bennett, your blood type is the only match we've found in the Western Hemisphere." The room seemed to spin. I looked at Dr. Stewart, who nodded confirmation. "Mr. Richter's medical team has been searching for a compatible donor for 6 weeks, Timothy continued. "Without the proper blood supply, the surgery cannot proceed. And without the surgery—" He left the sentence unfinished. "You want my blood," I said slowly, "for this billionaire's surgery. We're prepared to compensate you substantially for your assistance," Timothy said, his tone never wavering. He pulled out a single sheet of paper and slid it across the desk toward me. I looked down at the number. $1,200,000 to $1,200,000. "This is a joke," I whispered. "This has to be a joke." "I assure you, Mrs. Bennett, this is entirely serious." Timothy pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and handed it to me. On the screen was a bank transfer authorization for $360,000, 30%. The note said to be transferred immediately upon signing. My hands started shaking so badly that Sarah had to steady the phone. "The procedure would require multiple donations over approximately 3 weeks, Dr. Stewart explained, his voice gentle. "It's intensive but not dangerous with proper medical supervision, which you would receive at Switzerland's finest private cardiac clinic." Switzerland. 3 weeks. $1.2 million. 6 hours ago, I'd been panicking about finding $45 for my daughter's medication. Now this stranger was offering enough money to erase every debt, every humiliation, every sleepless night of the past 8 months. "I need to call my daughter," I heard myself say. Sarah brought me to a private office with a phone. My hands were still trembling as I dialed Emma's number. She answered on the second ring. "Mom, did you get the money for my inhaler?" "Emma, honey, something incredible just happened." My voice shook as I tried to explain the blood test, the specialist, the man in the expensive suit, the incomprehensible offer. There was a long silence after I finished. "Mom," Emma finally said, her voice careful, "this sounds insane, like organ trafficking or something." I verified Dr. Stewart's credentials. I assured her, having insisted on seeing his medical license, his hospital affiliations, everything. "And the Richter banking group is legitimate. I actually catered an event for one of their partner firms years ago. This is real, baby. So you're going to Switzerland today. If I do this," I said, my voice breaking, "we can pay off all the debt. You can go back to Northwestern. We can start over. Actually start over, not just survive." Another pause. I could hear her breathing, could imagine her face, my beautiful, brilliant daughter, forced to grow up too fast in the wreckage of my failure. "What's the alternative?" Emma asked quietly. "Not doing it." I looked at the wall at a motivational poster about saving lives through donation. "If I walk away, I'll still be homeless in 2 months when Grace finally asks me to leave. You'll still be working retail instead of finishing your architecture degree. I'll still be the woman who destroyed everything she built." "Then go," Emma said, and I could hear her crying now. "Go, Mom, but promise me you'll stay in constant contact and have everything in writing before you agree to anything." "I promise." After I hung up, I sat alone in that office for 10 minutes staring at my hands. These hands that had built a business, that had signed contracts worth millions, that had created beauty and celebration for thousands of people. These hands that now held the key to saving a stranger's life and my own. I walked back to the screening room where Timothy Walsh waited with his leather portfolio and his practiced patience. "I want to review the contract," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Every word. And I want several modifications." He blinked, clearly surprised. "Of course. What did you have in mind?" "A detailed schedule of donations with maximum volumes per session, explicit limits, the right to halt the process at any time if my health is compromised, payment of the first 30% before I board any plane, and I want my own attorney to review everything before I sign." Timothy Walsh studied me for a long moment, then smiled, a real smile this time, not the practiced one. "You negotiate like a CEO, Mrs. Bennett." "Until 8 months ago," I replied evenly, "I was one." 4 hours later, I stood at the base of a Gulfstream G650 private jet at Chicago Executive Airport, carrying only my purse and a hastily packed overnight bag from Grace's guest room. Sarah had hugged me goodbye, slipping me her personal number. "Call me when you get there," she'd said. "Let me know you're safe." As the plane taxied for takeoff, I stared out the window at Chicago's skyline growing smaller. Somewhere in that grid of buildings was the penthouse I'd lost, the office where I'd built my company, the life I'd thought defined me. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Love you, Mom. Be careful. You've got this." I looked at my reflection in the window, 52 years old, silver strands in my dark hair that I'd finally stopped dyeing, fine lines around my eyes that Ryan had suggested I do something about, the stubborn set of my jaw that my father always said I'd inherited from him. Nothing about me looked extraordinary. Nothing suggested I carried something so rare and valuable inside. The plane leveled at cruising altitude. Across the aisle, Timothy Walsh worked on his laptop, occasionally making calls in fluent German. From what I overheard, Mr. Richter's condition had stabilized enough for surgery, but they were racing against time. I pulled out my compact mirror and studied my reflection again. 24 hours ago, I was worthless. Abandoned by my husband, a failed businesswoman, a burden on my sister, unable to afford $45 for my daughter's medication. Now I was racing across the Atlantic Ocean because my blood, the very thing flowing through my veins every moment of every day of my life, could save one of the wealthiest men in Europe. The irony wasn't lost on me. After losing everything external that I thought defined my value, my company, my marriage, my home, my reputation, it turned out my true worth was something I'd been carrying inside all along. Something I'd never even known existed until I walked into that plasma center, desperate and broken, looking for $45. I closed my eyes and let the engine's hum lull me towards something that might have been sleep or might have been shock. Either way, when I woke up, my life would be different. The question was different: how the plane banked slightly, heading east across the dark expanse of the Atlantic, carrying me toward Switzerland, toward a billionaire I'd never met, toward a future I couldn't begin to imagine. In my purse, my phone buzzed again. "Grace, finally," Emma told me. "Are you insane? Call me." I turned off my phone and looked out at the stars. For the first time in 8 months, I felt something that might have been hope, or maybe just the absence of despair. At this point, I'd take either one. The Clinique des Alpes sat perched on the edge of Lake Geneva like a jewel in a crown of mountains. Through the limousine's tinted windows, I watched the Swiss Alps rise against a painfully blue sky, their snow-capped peaks reflecting in water so clear it looked like glass. This wasn't a hospital. It was a resort that happened to have world-class medical facilities hidden behind its luxury facade. Timothy Walsh helped me from the car, his hand steady on my elbow as I wobbled slightly jet lag and disbelief making the ground feel uncertain beneath my feet. "Your suite is ready," he said. "Dr. Weber will want to examine you this afternoon, but you should rest first. The next 3 weeks will be demanding." My suite. And it was definitely a suite, not a hospital room, featured floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the lake, a separate sitting area with a fireplace, a marble bathroom larger than Grace's entire guest room, and a private balcony that probably cost more per night than my monthly rent. I stood at the window still wearing my wrinkled travel clothes and tried to process the past 18 hours. Yesterday morning I'd been filling out forms at a plasma center. Now I was in Switzerland in a suite that belonged in a magazine spread about to give my blood to save a billionaire I'd never met. A soft knock interrupted my spiraling thoughts. "Mrs. Bennett," a familiar voice called through the door. I opened it to find Sarah Rodriguez standing there, smiling broadly now, wearing crisp scrubs with the clinic's logo embroidered on the pocket. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "Dr. Stewart arranged for me to join the medical team," she explained, stepping inside. "Since I was the first to identify your blood type, they thought I might be helpful during the donation process." She looked around the suite, clearly impressed. "Quite a step up from our clinic in Chicago, isn't it?" I laughed, the sound almost hysterical. "That's putting it mildly." Over the next hour, Sarah helped me settle in while explaining the schedule. Dr. Klaus Weber Alexander Richter's personal physician and one of Europe's leading cardiac surgeons would conduct a comprehensive health assessment. Then, if everything checked out, the first donation would happen tomorrow morning. "How is he?" I asked. "Mr. Richter, I mean." Sarah's expression grew serious. "Stable, but Dr. Weber says without the surgery within the next 10 days, his prognosis is poor. Your arrival bought him time, Mrs. Bennett. Literally bought him time." Doctor. Weber arrived at 4 o'clock, a distinguished man in his early 60s with silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and the quiet confidence of someone who'd performed thousands of surgeries. He was accompanied by 2 nurses who moved with choreographed efficiency. "Mrs. Bennett, welcome to Clinique des Alpes." He said his English precise, with only the faintest German accent. "I trust your journey was comfortable." "Quite," I replied, "though I'm still trying to understand exactly what I've agreed to." He nodded approvingly. "Transparency is essential. Let me explain everything." Over the next 90 minutes, Dr. Weber outlined the procedure in meticulous detail. Alexander Richter suffered from a congenital heart defect that had recently deteriorated, requiring urgent valve replacement surgery. The complexity wasn't just the surgery itself, but his immune system's hypersensitivity to foreign blood. "Any blood except your specific type would trigger a catastrophic immune response," Dr. Weber explained. "Your blood is quite literally the difference between life and death for Mr. Richter. I would need to donate every 72 hours 8 times over 21 days. Each donation would be 450 milliliters, nearly double a standard blood donation. Between donations, I'd follow a strict nutritional protocol to maintain my health." "This is intensive," Dr. Weber said, watching his nurses take my vitals. "But with proper care, it's safe. You're remarkably healthy for someone who's been under significant stress." I wondered what my medical chart said. Did it include recently bankrupt and abandoned by husband among my vital statistics? As the nurses drew blood samples for baseline testing, I studied Dr. Weber's face. "When will I meet him, Mr. Richter?" "This evening, if you're feeling up to it. He's requested your presence at dinner." "Requested?" I raised an eyebrow. "Or demanded?" A ghost of a smile crossed Dr. Weber's features. "With Alexander, those 2 things are often indistinguishable." Timothy Walsh appeared at 7 o'clock with a garment bag. "Mr. Richter has requested your presence at dinner," he said, echoing Dr. Weber's earlier statement. "We took the liberty of providing appropriate attire, as we understood your travel arrangements were hastily made." Inside the bag was an elegant black dress, simple, sophisticated, and suspiciously exactly my size. A pair of low heels and a pearl necklace completed the ensemble. The presumption might have offended me once. Now I was too exhausted to care, and too practical to turn down clothes that clearly cost more than my entire current wardrobe. 90 minutes later, I followed Timothy through quiet corridors to a private dining room in the clinic's residential wing. My heart hammered against my ribs. I was about to meet the man whose life depended on my blood, who was paying me more money than I'd made in 5 years, who had somehow orchestrated all of this with the efficiency of someone used to getting exactly what he wanted. The door opened. Alexander Richter sat in a wheelchair near floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. The setting sun painted everything gold, the water, the mountains, his gaunt face. He was tall, I could tell, even seated with deep-set eyes that evaluated me with unsettling intensity. 70, maybe 75 pounds underweight, his expensive suit hanging on a frame that had clearly been much more robust before illness ravaged it. But his eyes were sharp, intelligent, missing nothing. He rose slowly as I entered, leaning slightly on the wheelchair's arm for support. "Mrs. Bennett," he said, his voice surprisingly strong. "Please join me." A nurse stood discreetly in the corner, monitoring his vitals on a tablet. A small table had been set for two, elegantly arranged with crystal and silver that caught the fading light. "Mr. Richter," I acknowledged, taking the offered seat across from him. "Please call me Alexander." He poured water from a crystal carafe, his hands steady despite his obvious frailty. "We're going to be intimately connected over the next 3 weeks. Formality seems unnecessary." "Then I'm Olivia." He studied me in silence for a moment that stretched just past comfortable. Finally he spoke. "Tell me, Olivia, what circumstances led you to that donation center yesterday morning?" The directness caught me off guard. "I needed $45 for my daughter's asthma medication." His eyebrow rose. $45? That seems a remarkably small sum to drive someone of your apparent quality to sell plasma. I bristled slightly. 8 months ago, I owned a successful event planning company. I had a penthouse, a solid marriage, and retirement accounts. Life can change quickly, Mr. Richter, Alexander. "Indeed it can," he agreed. What happened? Perhaps it was the surreality of the situation, or exhaustion, or the way his eyes held no judgment, only genuine curiosity. But I found myself telling him everything. The equipment failure, the food poisoning, the lawsuits, the bankruptcy, Ryan packing his clothes, his cold fury, his immediate departure from Madison's apartment, the humiliating calls to creditors, living in Grace's guest room, watching Emma drop out of school, the progressive stripping away of everything I'd thought made me valuable. So this morning I needed $45 I didn't have, I concluded, surprised to find my dinner untouched. And now I'm in Switzerland dining with a man who's paying millions for my blood. Life is nothing if not unpredictable. Alexander had listened without interruption, his expression inscrutable. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Do you know what I find most interesting about your story, Olivia?" "What's that?" "You've lost everything external, your business, your home, your husband. Yet you still carry within you something of extraordinary value that no one can take away." He gestured toward my arm where a tiny mark from today's blood test was barely visible. "There's a profound metaphor there, don't you think?" Our eyes met across the table, and in that moment I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. This stranger, this billionaire fighting for his life, had distilled my situation to its essence in a way that both disarmed and disturbed me. "I suppose there is," I agreed quietly, though I'd trade metaphorical profundity for my daughter's college tuition in a heartbeat. He laughed, then a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even him before a slight wince crossed his features. The nurse immediately stepped forward, but he waved her away. "I believe we'll get along well, Olivia," he said, composing himself. "I suspect our arrangement may benefit us both in ways neither of us yet understands." The first donation took place the following morning in a room that resembled a spa more than a medical facility. I reclined on a heated leather chair while Dr. Weber's team prepared equipment with choreographed precision. "We'll be taking 1 unit today," Dr. Weber explained, checking the IV in my arm. "Your comfort and safety are our priority. Any discomfort, alert us immediately." I watched my dark red blood flow through the tube into a specialized collection bag handled with extraordinary care by 2 nurses. The liquid that had been worthless to me 48 hours ago was now being treated like liquid gold. "What makes my blood so special?" I asked. "I understand it's rare, but what exactly is different?" Dr. Weber adjusted his glasses, pleased by my interest. Most people have rhesus antigens protein markers on their red blood cells. You have none. Your blood lacks all 61 possible rhesus antigens, making it compatible with virtually any rare blood type. More importantly, for Mr. Richter's case, your blood won't trigger the severe immune response that would occur with standard transfusions. The donation took 15 minutes, but Dr. Weber insisted I remain for 2 hours of observation afterward. A chef delivered a gourmet meal rich in iron and protein, along with fresh-pressed juice and supplements. Back in my suite, I found a small gift box on the coffee table with a handwritten note, a token of appreciation for today's contribution, the first of many, I hope. A.R. Inside was a delicate platinum bracelet with a single ruby charm, simple, elegant, and undoubtedly expensive. I set it aside, uncertain, and called Emma. "Mom," she answered immediately. "Are you okay? Did they take your blood yet?" "Just finished. The procedure was easy, much more pleasant than I'd imagined." We talked for 20 minutes, my describing the clinic, the care, the surprising dinner with Alexander. Emma listened carefully, asking questions, making sure I was truly all right. "That's good," she said when I finished, but I detected hesitation in her voice. "What's wrong, honey? Dad showed up at Aunt Grace's looking for you." My stomach dropped. What did he want? When Grace told him you were in Switzerland, he started asking all these questions about why and who you were with. Emma's tone hardened. He seemed calculating, Mom, like he was putting together a puzzle. "Did he mention wanting to talk when I get back?" "Yes. He told Grace he'd been rethinking things and realized he'd acted hastily." "Can you believe that?" Unfortunately, I could. Ryan had always been astute about following money. If he'd caught even a whisper of my arrangement with the Richter banking group, and news about wealthy people's medical procedures always leaked, somehow he would reappear like a shark scenting blood. The irony of that metaphor wasn't lost on me. "Mom," Emma continued, her voice dropping, you wouldn't consider getting back together with him, would you?" "Absolutely not," I said firmly. 26 years of marriage ended the moment he walked out. No amount of money changes that. After we hung up, I stood on the balcony watching twilight settle over Lake Geneva. Alexander's observation from dinner returned to me. "You've lost everything external, yet still carry something of extraordinary value inside." Was my value now reduced to this biological quirk? Was I just a resource again, this time for my blood, instead of my event planning expertise? My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan Harper. "Heard you're in Switzerland for some medical procedure. Are you ill? Should I be concerned? We should discuss this as family." I stared at the message, anger bubbling up from some reservoir I'd thought had run dry. As family. The audacity was breathtaking. The man who'd emptied our joint accounts and moved in with another woman while I was still shell-shocked from losing my business now wanted to invoke family ties. I typed a reply, deleting and rewriting several times. "We're not family anymore, Ryan. You made that abundantly clear when you left. My medical decisions are no longer your concern." His response came immediately. "Don't be hasty, Olivia. People make mistakes. I've been thinking a lot about us lately." "I bet you have," I muttered, setting the phone aside without responding. By the third day, the clinic staff had settled into a routine around my presence. Morning nurses greeted me by name. The chef prepared post-donation meals according to my preferences. Even Timothy Walsh had softened his formal demeanor slightly. I donated my second unit with Dr. Weber, declaring my recovery exceptional. My body was adapting well to the intensive schedule, thanks to meticulous care. What I hadn't expected was Alexander's continued interest in my company. After our initial dinner, he'd requested another meeting, then another. Each conversation revealed more layers to this complex man who held such power in the financial world, yet now found himself utterly dependent on a stranger's biological quirk. On the evening of my third day, we sat in the clinic's private garden, a stunning space with manicured hedges and the ever-present view of the Alps. Alexander had insisted on being outdoors despite Dr. Weber's poorly concealed frustration. "You didn't have to accept, he remarked, his gaze on the distant mountains. "Despite my position, you could have named your price, demanded $10,020,000. I would have paid it. I considered this. Perhaps that's why you're a banker and I ran an event company. Different instincts." His piercing gaze studied me. "I suspect it's more than that. You accepted quickly, but you negotiated terms carefully. Medical safety protocols schedule limitations, clear boundaries. You wanted fair compensation, not exploitation. That speaks to character. I shrugged, uncomfortable with his analysis. Or just business sense. My company may have failed, but I learned a few things in 20 years. Tell me about it, he said, surprising me. Your company. What made it special before the incident? No one had asked me about Elegance Events since its collapse. People either avoided the topic entirely or spoke of it in hushed, pitying tones. But Alexander's question held genuine curiosity, so I found myself describing the business I'd built from nothing, starting in my apartment, landing my first major client through persistence and creativity, growing to 52 employees with corporate clients across the Midwest. Our signature was personalization. I said, pride creeping into my voice despite myself. We never used templates. Every event was built from the ground up based on the client's vision. We were known for solving impossible problems. The mayor once called us the Navy SEALs of event planning. Until the seafood incident, he noted not unkindly. Until then, I agreed. One equipment failure, one bad night, and 20 years of reputation vanished. Alexander shifted in his chair, a slight wince betraying discomfort he tried to hide. The business world can be merciless that way. One misstep erases 1,000 successes. Is that what happened to you? I asked boldly. A misstep. He raised an eyebrow, clearly unused to such direct questioning. My condition is congenital, a birth defect, though it only manifested serious symptoms recently. I meant with your family, I clarified. I've noticed no one has visited you. For someone preparing for life-threatening surgery, you seem remarkably alone. A shadow crossed his face. My family situation is complicated. My ex-wife lives in Monaco with her third husband. My son manages our Asian operations from Singapore. They've been notified, of course, but they haven't come. They'll attend my funeral if necessary, he said with surprising detachment, or the press conference announcing my recovery should you and Dr. Weber succeed. The casual way he referenced his possible death struck me. Doesn't that bother you, being alone at a time like this? He gestured around us at the private clinic, the attentive staff, the luxury. I'm hardly alone. I have a full medical team staff attending to every need, and now you, my golden-blooded savior. That's not the same as family. Perhaps not. He examined me with renewed interest. Yet you're hardly surrounded by loved ones yourself, Olivia. Your daughter remains in Chicago. From what you've mentioned, your relationship with your sister seems strained at best. The observation stung because it was accurate. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed insistently. A text from Emma, then another, then a call. I'm sorry, I said to Alexander. I should take this. Of course. I walked to the edge of the garden, pressing the phone to my ear. Emma, what's wrong? Mom, her voice was shaking. Dad's lawyer just served me with papers. He's filing for a portion of the Richter payment. He's claiming it's community property because you were still legally married when you signed the contract. The garden seemed to tilt. I gripped the stone railing. Can't we have a separation agreement? His lawyer says that doesn't matter. Says any compensation earned during the marriage, even after separation, is subject to division under Illinois law. Emma was crying now. Mom, he's coming for half. $600,000. He wants to take half of what you almost died earning. I'll handle it, I said, my voice harder than I'd intended. I'll handle it, baby. Don't worry. But as I hung up, I realized I had no idea how. I turned to find Alexander watching me, his expression knowing. Your ex-husband, he said simply. It wasn't a question. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Come sit, he said gently, and tell me everything. And somehow, under the fading Swiss sky, I did. Alexander listened to everything about Ryan's lawsuit, his expression darkening with each detail. I can stop this, he said when I finished. One phone call to my legal team in Chicago. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. I don't want to owe you more than I already do. This isn't about debt, Olivia. It's about fairness. It's about me handling my own problems, I said firmly. I've spent 8 months being rescued by my sister by circumstances. I need to fight this battle myself. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I understand, but the offer stands. Over the next week, our relationship shifted into something neither of us had anticipated. Day 5 after my second donation, Alexander came to my suite, still using the wheelchair, still trying to hide how much effort movement required. He brought a business analysis of my company's failure. "You didn't fail," he said, spreading documents across my coffee table. "You encountered a perfect storm equipment malfunction supplier, bankruptcy insurance loophole. No CEO could have prevented it." I stared at the meticulous breakdown, something painful loosening in my chest. Day 8, we had dinner on my balcony. Alexander spoke about his son Nathan. "I taught him to succeed in business," he said quietly. "But I forgot to teach him to be human. He's brilliant, ruthless, and utterly alone. Like I was before." He stopped. "Before what?" "Before I got sick. Before you." The words hung between us heavy with meaning neither of us was ready to name. Day 10, Dr. Weber permitted Alexander a 3-hour excursion into Geneva's Old Town. We visited a small art gallery, Alexander moving slowly but determinedly. "If I survive this surgery," he said, standing before a painting of a storm-tossed sea, "I'll live differently. How less work, more moments like this." He turned to me. "More honesty about what matters." My heart hammered. "And what matters?" Before he could answer, his phone rang Timothy with an urgent business call. The moment dissolved. But that night I lay awake acknowledging what I'd been avoiding. I was developing feelings for this man. This complicated, brilliant, dying man who'd somehow seen me when I'd felt invisible. Nathan Richter arrived on day 14 like a cold front sweeping in from the mountains. 35, impeccably dressed with his father's sharp features, but none of his warmth. He found me in the garden after my 4th donation. "Mrs. Bennett." He extended his hand with corporate precision. "We need to discuss my father's judgment." "His judgment seems fine to me." "Does it?" Nathan's smile was thin. "He's terminally ill vulnerable, and he's developed an obvious attachment to you. That concerns me from a fiduciary standpoint." Heat flushed my face. "Your father and I have a medical arrangement. Please, I've seen the dinner request, the gift." He gestured at the bracelet I'd finally started wearing. "The private conversations. My father has a history of poor decisions when it comes to women, especially when he's feeling mortal. I'm not some gold digger, aren't you?" His voice was cold. Bankrupt event planner desperate for money suddenly indispensable to a dying billionaire. It's a convenient narrative. I stood, hands shaking. "Your father is paying me for my blood. A medical service. What develops beyond that is between 2 adults. Not when those adults include my father whose estate I'll inherit. I'm watching you, Mrs. Bennett." That evening, Alexander called Nathan to his room. Through the walls, I heard raised voices, the first time I'd heard Alexander truly angry. When Nathan left, he wouldn't meet my eyes. Alexander sent me a message an hour later. "I'm sorry for my son. He sees the world through spreadsheets. He'll learn." But the encounter left me shaken. Was I being naive? Was this connection real? Or was I just another desperate person Alexander could manipulate with his wealth? Day 18 arrived my final donation before surgery. I'd given 7 times 3.2 liters total. My body was exhausted despite excellent care. Dr. Weber performed the last collection with extra caution. "Tomorrow we operate," he said. "You've done everything we asked, Mrs. Bennett. Mr. Richter has the best possible chance." That night, Alexander requested to see me privately. He sat in his room, frailer than I'd yet seen him, the reality of tomorrow's surgery etched in every line of his face. "If I don't survive," he began. "Don't. Olivia, please. There's a 40% chance I won't wake up." He pulled out an envelope. "Don't open this unless no matter what happens actually. Open it after the surgery. Promise me. I don't want gifts or final words. I want you to live. Olivia." He said my name like a prayer. "In 52 years, you're the best thing that's happened to me." "You barely know me." "I know enough." He reached for my hand. I let him take it. "Alexander, He pulled me closer, and before I could think, his lips were on mine. Gentle, desperate may be the last kiss of his life. I kissed him back. When we finally pulled apart, tears streaked my face. "Live," I whispered. "Please live." Surgery day began at dawn. I waited in my suite, the unopened envelope burning in my hands. Sarah sat with me holding my coffee because I was shaking too badly. 7 hours into the operation, Dr. Weber appeared at my door, his face grim. "There's a complication. The artificial valve, his heart is rejecting it. We need more blood. Immediately. Take it from the supply." We've used everything. We need more. Fresh. His eyes met mine. From you. My blood ran cold. I just donated 3 days ago. The protocol says minimum 72 hours. I know. And you've already given 7 donations in 18 days. The safe maximum is 4 per month. He spoke rapidly. If you donate now, you risk hypovolemic shock organ failure. But without it, he dies on the table in 15 minutes. The room spun. Weber, I can't ask her, Sarah started. I have to. There's no choice. I looked at the envelope in my hands. Thought of Emma. My future. Everything I'd survived. Then thought of Alexander's eyes. His laugh. The way he'd seen me. How much do you need? 900 to 1,000 milliliters. Olivia, this could kill you. Will it save him? Probably. I stood, my decision made. Let's go. They set up the transfusion in the room adjacent to the operating theater. I could see through the window Alexander's open chest, Dr. Weber's team working frantically. The needle went in. My blood flowed out through tubes directly into Alexander's failing heart. 650 milliliters. My vision blurred. 800 milliliters. The room tilted. 900 milliliters. Sarah's voice distant. That's enough, we need to stop 950 milliliters. Everything went black. I woke in ICU to Emma's face hovering over me. Baby, my voice was sandpaper. Mom, she was crying. You collapsed. They said you almost Alexandered alive. Surgery successful. Emma wiped her eyes. But Mom, there's something you need to know. That envelope he gave you, I opened it. I'm sorry, but I needed to know if he was... She handed me the letter. I read Alexander's precise handwriting and my world shattered. Dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, you deserve the truth. I couldn't speak. I didn't find you by accident. 3 years ago, your company catered an event I attended. I didn't remember you, but my team did. When I learned I needed rare blood, we screened thousands. Found 12 renal donors. Only you had the variant I needed. But here's what I never told you I knew about your bankruptcy. About Ryan. About your desperation. Timothy Walsh was in Chicago for 2 weeks waiting for you to reach that donation center. We knew you'd come, we'd been monitoring your finances. We knew when you'd be desperate enough. I manipulated your lowest moment. Waited until you had no choice but to accept. I didn't expect to fall in love with you. I'm sorry. Alexander, the paper trembled in my hands. He'd orchestrated everything. Known I was vulnerable. Exploited my desperation. Every conversation, every moment of connection built on manipulation. Emma squeezed my hand. Mom, I'm so sorry. I stared at the ceiling, feeling nothing and everything at once. The man I'd saved, the man I'd fallen for, had hunted me like prey, and I'd nearly died for him anyway.